Alright, so Marvel, Iron Man, Hulk, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the entire Marvel MCU. Well, how did it all get started? Okay, so Marvel, or formerly Atlas Comics, or formerly Timely Publications, was founded in 1939 by Martin Goodman, who was in the business of creating pulp fiction. Now, you're probably thinking about Pulp Fiction the movie, but what Pulp Fiction referred to in the early 20th century were cheap, mass-produced fiction magazines that were printed on cheap wood pulp paper. Though cheap to produce, pulp fiction magazines normally featured vibrant covers to catch audiences and were known for fantastical, exploitative, imaginative narratives, which some people consider to be the precursors to modern comic books and superheroes. And due to the cheap costs of writing and producing pulps, people in the business of producing pulp fiction were basically interested in pumping out as much content as possible with the hopes that one would stick. Now, you gotta remember, the founder of Marvel, Martin Goodman, was all about making money through as many characters he could publish. He once actually said, if you get a title that catches on, then add a few more and you're in for a nice profit. So you see, Goodman's rock-solid business strategy was more of a quantity over quality approach, and he believed in simply making as many characters as possible, hoping a few would stick to turn a nice profit. Now, when the pulp industry started to cool, Goodman jumped into this fancy new form of publication known as comic books. So he started Timely Publications in 1939 as a spin-off of his current pulp fiction business right here at 330 West 42nd Street in New York City, New York. Under the new Timely Publication name, Goodman's first comic was Marvel Comics Issue 1. You see where we're going here? Marvel Comics Issue 1 featured the first appearance of the Human Torch and Namor the Submariner, and sold 900,000 copies, #money, #profit. In 1940, Timely Publications hired writer Joe Simon and artist Jack Kirby to create America Man. Captain America. Now, the 1940s were the aptly named golden age for comic books. Remember, back then there were no TV shows, video games, or fancy internet thing. All kids had were comic books, and maybe that was for the better. So for a while, times were good. Goodman made money and kids got their comics. But
then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
It was the post-war era and comic books were running out of fashion. Marvel changed its name to Atlas Comics in 1951 and started to divest from its portfolio of superheroes in favor of comic books which featured horror, westerns, mystery, crime, war, and medieval adventures. And according to Stan Lee, who was the writer for Atlas Comics at the time, Atlas survived chiefly because it produced work quickly, cheaply, and at a passable quality. Now, to solidify this dark age for Marvel Comics, here are some of the most memorable Marvel publications you've probably never heard of. Remember that quantity over quality thing that Goodman cared about? Yeah. But things got even worse in 1954 when a psychiatrist by the name of Frederick Wortham testified to a Senate subcommittee on juvenile delinquency, who said that comic books were linked to teenage pregnancy and homosexuality.
It is my opinion, without any reasonable doubt and without any reservation, that comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
And no joke, he freaking testified that I think Hitler was a beginner compared to the comic book industry. Now, there are a lot of shitty Nazi/Hitler analogies out there, but this one totally takes the cake. Plus, if he really thought that comic books were so bad, Mr. Wortham, I welcome you to the 21st century to hear your rock-solid psychiatric evaluation on...
Boom headshot! Boom headshot!
Yep, after Wortham's fact-based testimony, parents everywhere basically said comic books were the devil, and sales plummeted, with the industry creating a self-censorship organization known as the Comics Code Authority. Before the purge on comic books went down, there were 5 major comic book publishers, When the dust settled, there were only two, and you know them, Marvel and DC. In the battle of the last comic book publishers, DC took the first shot and purchased Marvel's distribution arm to limit the number of comic books that Marvel could distribute each month. And after a while, Marvel's strategy of selling cheaply produced, low-quality fiction characters to kids just quite wasn't working out, so Marvel changed their strategy. Okay, they were like, okay, it's time to sell comic books to teens and young adults. Enter comic book legends Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko, who were collectively responsible for some of the most famous characters we all know and love today. Iron Man, Thor, Hulk are just to name a few. In 1961, Atlas Comics became for the first time Marvel Comics. From 1961 to 1965, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko went on a creative blitz, pumping out characters with awesome origin stories. And unlike the DC characters of the time, who were all these beautiful Abercrombie creatures, Marvel attempted to appeal to the everyman and featured characters who started off as ordinary people and who were transformed by, gamma radiation, being kidnapped, etc., into superheroes. So the 1960s roll along, and it's the Cold War, and Marvel got pretty political. And what I mean by that is from 1962 to 1965, there were more communists in Marvel Comics than on the subscription list of Pravada. Communist agents attack Ant-Man in his laboratory, Red Henchmen jump the Fantastic Four on the moon, and the Viet Cong guerrillas take potshots on Iron Man. So you get the idea, Marvel don't like communism too much. Russians are bad, Vietnam is bad, moving on. In 1961, Marvel introduced the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Ant-Man. And in 1962 came Spider-Man and Iron Man. And of course, just a little bit later came the Avengers and the X-Men. So by the end of 1965, Marvel circulated over 35 million comics a year and competed toe-to-toe with DC. However, Marvel's fortunes changed when dirty little corporate America decided to ruin all the fun. So this video is getting a little bit long, and I have it split into a 3-part series. And so here's the shameless plug, right? If you enjoyed what you saw, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like and a sub, and if you want to learn more about Marvel's next 50 years, go ahead and click on the next video here. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have: patience. Sometimes patience is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing.